Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Horizen and StakeHound AMA. My name is Angie Villarreal, and I'm going to be your host and moderator today for this live AMA. I'm a project manager at Horizen, and as you know, we have recently partnered with StakeHound for a very interesting collaboration that's going to build a DeFi bridge for SZEN. So we're super happy, super glad to be here. And with us today, I have Robert Viglione. He is the co-founder and team lead at Horizen. And I have Albert Castellana, and he is the CEO of StakeHound. So we'll be having a session of Q&A, and we'll be also sharing the latest news of our collaboration. So Albert, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background at StakeHound?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks, Angie, and thanks, Rob, for having me here today. We're very excited about this partnership as well, and we're really looking forward to having stZEN out in the wild doing stuff. So yeah, very excited about this, and I'm really looking forward to working together. So to give you a bit of background, my background is in computer science. I did a couple of startups before I joined crypto. I joined crypto 2013, then jumped into Ethereum, then jumped into NEM. In NEM, I was one of the co-founders of the NEM Foundation. I essentially experienced like a lot of what it takes to build a layer one protocol and to actually get adoption for it, right? So all this type of learnings helped me a lot in going forward. Eventually, I joined Radix as the chief product officer. Which is like this highly scalable layer one protocol. And while we were in Radix, we were looking into DeFi and like automated market makers, so decentralized exchanges and stable coins and like all these different things as well that seem to be finding product market fit with the crypto community, right? And we were looking into that and eventually came up with the idea of StakeHound, which is how do you make it so that users don't need to be choosing between staking and participating in DeFi. So yeah, that's very briefly my story.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you, Albert, for your introduction. And I would like also for Rob to introduce himself.
Yeah, well, I'm Rob. I like long walks on the beach and, just kidding. I won't go to my personal preferences, but guys, I'm a co-founder of Horizen, the public blockchain, and CEO of Horizen Labs, this, a software company building in the Horizen ecosystem. And, prior to getting to this world, I was a physicist, mathematician, spent the first part of my career in the military as an Air Force officer. And then I actually went back to academia after I got into Bitcoin and started studying Bitcoin from an asset pricing perspective because my PhD is in financial economics, and then launched Zen Cash at the time in 2017. The idea there was really experimenting in a couple different ways in the Bitcoin crypto world. One was on more sustainable economics, and we get into a whole fun conversation on the economics of that, and the other was scaling privacy. And I think that the privacy scaling stuff is going to be the next big kind of double whammy. Once we get into Horizen, into the DeFi world with Albert and his team with this stZEN product, we're going to really take off in a bunch of different ways on very fun innovations in the DeFi world within the Horizen tech stack.
Amazing. Super excited. We were just talking in the background about how excited we are internally. So it's amazing. So Rob, I would like for you to tell us a little bit about this partnership, kind of like open it up the conversation about what this means for us.
Yeah, so a number of things. But first, I want to just say entering a different segment of the industry than we have had experience in, it's really important to partner with someone of, number one, high integrity. Obviously, we only work with really good people, and Albert and his team are pretty amazing. But number two, just someone that really understands DeFi inside out. And I have been so impressed with the StakeHound team and Albert, in particular, really get this industry, really understand where it's going and really how to participate. And being innovators in the space was probably the most important thing for us to find the right partner and to get now Zen into the DeFi ecosystem. We're kicking it off with this stZEN product, which is phenomenally, I think extremely innovative, but so important for us because one of the big differentiators for Horizen is our node system. It's a really big asset for our industry. We have over 45,000 full nodes on our network, registered nodes on our network that get compensated. And for us, getting into this DeFi world with a wrapped Zen product was a big decision. Like, one, we have to do it because there's so much innovation happening in DeFi and so much value being created. And I'm not just talking about coins going up in price. I'm talking about real economic value that's being created. We have to be part of it. And even just diving in and learning how it works and getting some products out there is so important. But matching this with our big core value prop of having this huge node system is so important. And you only do this right now through a liquid staking solution that StakeHound offers. That's why we're so excited for the stZEN product rather than going down another wrapping alternative. This is, I think, the dominant one that just plays to the big strengths that we have as an ecosystem, and then also having just the right partner in StakeHound.
For sure. And I would also like to ask the same question to you, Albert. What do you think that this means for StakeHound?
So StakeHound's vision is essentially to be the kind of one-stop shop where you can find the best protocols, the best staking protocols, and you can know that you've got a set of bridges, and you can essentially have communication between all these different islands, right? So I always explain, like, I see all these different layer 1 protocols as an island. Each one of these islands have their own communities, their own economy, like their own economies, their own kind of businesses inside of them, like the things that you can do with those tokens. But most, like kind of historically, until now at least, it was very difficult to bridge from one to the other while kind of remaining part of that community, right? So you essentially had to sell your tokens to go into another island, right? What we're essentially trying to do is we're building this bridge so that people on the Horizen island can go and across into, say, Ethereum, and they can be participating there, even with things that kind of are part of the Horizen island still, right? So essentially the idea is, how do you allow users that want to be supporting the network? So, I mean, proof of stake is critical. It's very important to be able to secure those networks. It's a fundamental piece of the infrastructure. It's a shame that people have to be essentially selling and kind of forgetting about the security of the infrastructure to actually jump into something that's just because of it's giving it more yield, right? So how can we actually make it so that you can be earning from staking at the same time as participating in DeFi, right? So I think it's going to be very interesting, precisely because of what Rob was saying about like the huge number of nodes, like how important the infrastructure is behind, and when there's going to be things like the side chains, for example, and the kind of the fee generation will come onto that. Like, it's going to be very important to understand, like, how can we make the infrastructure be as kind of productive as possible for the people that are in the system, right? Something that a lot of people, for example, don't like normally have like the minimum amounts to be able to have nodes, supernode, for example, or people that just don't want to or can't have their assets locked for a very long time, right? So that's kind of the problem with proof of stake. You've got that you as a user, you have to choose. Do you want to be staking or you want to be participating in DeFi? If you're staking, you're essentially locking your assets for, an X APY over a period of time, right? But you can do nothing about it, right? Why shouldn't you be able to, for example, borrow against those assets, right? Why shouldn't you be able to be providing liquidity against those assets? Then everyone is complaining about, oh, this token doesn't have liquidity and so on, right? But the second biggest exchange right now is Uniswap, right? And you've got Uniswap, SwitchSwap, all these different AMMs, which is great innovations. But they essentially mean that the communities now can be supporting those assets, right? But the user needs to be dropping their proof of stake assets for supporting the assets on the market. Now with us, they can do kind of both things. And we're extremely excited about Horizen precisely because we know that it has an amazing community behind. I think that the product is amazing as well. Like in terms of what you guys are trying to achieve is truly inspiring. And we're extremely excited to have Horizen join our family. And looking forward to all these use cases that we're working on right now.
Awesome. Thank you as well for receiving us as family. Super excited also as well. So, okay, so thank you everyone to the community. They have been contributing with their questions, and I'm starting to see here a bunch of them. They're really, really good. So I would kind of like start also opening in the conversation just related to what we're saying right now, through this connection, through this bridge, kind of like bringing it all together and make it very, very easy for the users, for the communities out there. So the first question would be for Rob, and it's basically, why is Horizen a good fit for DeFi?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I don't necessarily, well, there's two threads here. One is there's this whole DeFi world going on right now without Horizen, and it's something that we want our community to be able to participate in. Just like Albert said, we don't want to be in our little island where we're just kind of insular and just focusing on our own stuff. We want to be part of this innovation that's going on elsewhere. And I just don't like our users to have to choose between, being part of, our Horizen Island, or, selling their stake and then going and doing other things. This bridge is so critical because you can do both. We want you to do both. And another important point that Albert mentioned, I want to hone in on, is making our infrastructure as optimized as possible. So it is intelligent, deployment of this infrastructure as possible. So rather than just having infrastructure deployed in one thing, stake your Zen, run nodes, that's critical for our network and its healthy functioning and being globally distributed and so forth. But then to be able to take these same assets and be able to do multiple things with them simultaneously. So for instance, borrowing against your Zen that's staked. This is a real asset. Why shouldn't it act as collateral like real assets do outside of the crypto world? And you could do something with your collateral. It kind of goes towards the Hernando de Soto economics vision of dead capital in the developing world, where you've got certain legal jurisdictions that just aren't as mature, and because of this, people are stuck with maybe dormant capital, might be a better word for it. Not good claims on their assets that they're sitting on, so they can't really use them in the financial world. Same thing in crypto. We want to actually modernize what we're doing from version 1 crypto ecosystems like Horizen, and get these assets to better use or multiple uses, so that people can actually really harvest the value that's being created in this industry. Now, the second thing of where we want to go is more on the technology side and getting into DeFi, not just having this very important wrapped Zen product, but even I would love to work with Albert and his team on other things, like other technology applications of using our sidechain tech and zero knowledge proofs to think about privacy preserving DeFi applications that might come out of the Horizen ecosystem, rather than us just, participating in, say, the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. Why don't we create unique products that are really just optimized with privacy in mind?
Absolutely. Actually, if I may chime in, right? So when we started the product, the project, we were actually looking into what does it take for a layer 1 protocol to work, and not just to work. Why do developers go to a specific layer 1 protocol or another, right? And it's all about the wealth. You need pools of wealth in the protocol, so that other developers will join in and kind of use that stuff, right? Essentially, by having an stZEN in Ethereum, Horizen, the team will meet all these different parties, will be kind of in touch with all these different products and teams that will potentially be able to build stuff as well on Horizen in the future, right? So it's essentially, by building this bridge, this is bidirectional. We can eventually make it so that all these different assets can be moving, to Horizen for specific use cases that have been kind of discovered through, be already in other islands and understand those other cultures. So yeah, it's very much related to the reason why we actually built the product in the first place. That's the origin of it, really.
For sure. Actually, one of the next question is just kind of related to that, how. And this is for Albert, it's how users can benefit from Zen staking in your ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. So let me maybe start by kind of explaining Eli 5 what this is, right? So this solution is called liquid staking, right? Liquid staking essentially is, what we do essentially is someone has a bunch of Zen, right? And they would like to be participating in DeFi, but at the same time, they would like to be, earning staking rewards, right? So what we have developed essentially is a token that represents the service of staking one single Zen, right? So, you've got 100 Zen, you send them to us, then you're going to get, in exchange of those 100 Zen, 100 stZEN, right? Let's say that's on Ethereum, that's an ERC20 token. We're going to look into that in just a second. But essentially, now that I've got those 100 Zen, now that we've got those 100 Zen, what we do is we put them in a custody provider. So we have multiple custody providers. Essentially, that's kind of our security layer, right? We can dive into that a bit more, but essentially, how do you actually have a solution that is both compliant and secure and flexible, so that we can actually have all these different layer 1 protocols, all of them integrated under the same umbrella, right? And that's why, well, this is essentially a centralized solution, but we took this decision to make it centralized because then what we can do is, when those assets are in very good custody, we then stake them, right? So we can use multiple staking providers, essentially helping the infrastructure be distributed a little bit more, right? So maybe it's not decentralized, but we can have multiple staking providers that are helping the nodes, all of them under the same umbrella, and all of them essentially helping the ecosystem have this bridge laid down, to DeFi, right? So that's essentially how it works. Now, the thing is, like, when you have those 100 stZEN, then you can do things with them, right? Like, you can just, first, for example, you just hold them. So just by holding them, as I said, I'll repeat, one stZEN is essentially the representation, the tokenized representation of the service of staking one Zen, right? And that essentially means that just by holding it, you will see how the balance of stZEN will increase over time. So every time that there's a reward distribution, what we do is we represent that reward distribution on the holders of stZEN, whoever that is. So if you go ahead and from your 100 stZEN, you send 50 to your sister, then, she has that service, that representation, right? And it's going to be changing over time. So just by holding them, she's going to see how the number of stZEN in her wallet is going to be changing, right? You can do other things, though. You can, that's essentially just like staking, right? You don't need to be, setting up any nodes. You don't need to have like minimum amounts, nothing like this. Just hold the token, do nothing else, and then you're going to be earning staking rewards. Now, once you have those assets, and now we're kind of entering DeFi, right? So it's very important. Like we have found like there's very big kind of gaps, knowledge gaps in like what DeFi is and what an AMM is, when impermanent loss is. Like every community has different understandings of this. I think like it's going to take a few months until people really understand all of these different concepts. But essentially, I will kind of explain it. Simply put, DeFi is essentially a bunch of functionalities that are built on top of the concept of liquidity pools, right? So you can have a pool of liquidity where people put in money, and with this pool of liquidity, people can borrow against it. Or with this pool of liquidity, people can be trading against this pool of liquidity, right? So essentially, things you can do is you can get those stZEN, and you can deposit them on what's called an automated market maker. So essentially, Uniswap. Uniswap is this tool, this decentralized exchange that allows users to deposit their liquidity, right? And then anyone can come in and trade against it, leaving a little fee there. And those little fees can actually add to quite a lot. Like if you look into uniswap.info, you can see that about, I think it's the average about 15, 17% APY just by providing you liquidity on an AMM, right? So things that before, essentially, this is you're becoming Binance, right? And you're profiting from essentially the business that Binance is doing, but in this case, there's no Binance in the middle. It's the protocol itself that's doing this, right? That's
I love that analogy, Albert. I love it. That's great.
I think it's, to me, like this is the number one, like kind of invention of DeFi, like the thing that really made it explode is this. And on top of this, like what's interesting as well is that they made it so that you can be tokenizing that liquidity, right? And then you can do things with it. You can do what's called yield farming, which is you deposit it on something that will be incentivizing you, will be giving you extra tokens. Like, I don't know, you go to SushiSwap, you deposit stZEN versus ETH, for example, and then that can be incentivized, giving you extra rewards just because you're in that single specific pool, right? That's one type of liquidity pools, essentially, the ones that allow people to be trading against it, right? But another way of another type of those are those for lending. So what if you can get your stZEN and use it as a collateral for a loan? So you essentially can deposit those 100 stZEN, and while they're earning staking rewards, you can get a loan from them, say in USDC or ETH or whatever, and you can be using them. When you repay back, you will get the stZEN that you put at the beginning plus the staking rewards over time. So potentially you can have negative interest rate loans where you're using the stZEN as collateral. You see, I'm fully liquid. I can be using those ETH or those USDC for doing anything that I want while I'm earning staking rewards and while I'm actually supporting the network's functionality, right? Like it's actually securing the network still, yes. And it's just like, well, you're essentially triple dipping. Like you can actually use both things to make the most of it, right? So that's why we're so excited about this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's. I think we're tackling different things you can do and how you interact in the ecosystem. And by doing just one thing, it's like it has also like impact on other things that you can do, like staking and you're lending at the same time. So it's very, very interesting. I would like to get more deep into that later in the conversation. So I see here one question for Rob. This says, why did Horizen want to take part in Ethereum ecosystem? How can STZEN holders benefit from this partnership?
Yeah, so I mean, it's follows from basically this conversation so far is we want more options for our community to do different things that unlock value for people, right? So the ultimate thing here is to be able to do multiple things with the same asset or to do different things, add flexibility and options for people is so important. That's just step one. Step two, and this was something touched on already, was, this is a bi-directional thing. So information goes in both ways, and partnerships can go in both directions as well. So we're going in, diving into the Ethereum DeFi world, because that's the most mature DeFi marketplace right now. There's so much innovation going on there, so many players, so many innovators. We want to be part of it. We want to learn. We want to offer a ton of opportunities for our community. And then on the other end, we're going to be building complementary products that actually leverage our technology and our unique value prop, particularly on scaling privacy is the really big thing with our sidechain system, and interesting use cases for zero knowledge proofs to be able to do things that might augment or take this DeFi innovation to another different, maybe next level.
Awesome. I see here another interesting question because you were mentioning, Albert, about security. So one question here is very interesting. It says, is StakeHound secure? How is StakeHound's institutional grade custody partner?
Mm-hmm. So there's kind of two layers there, right? On one side is how do we actually hold the assets, right? And we essentially use two main custody providers right now. In the case of Horizen, what's going to happen is that when Zen come in, we do KYC and AML and everything that comes in and out, right? Most of the users will not see this. Most of the users actually go into Uniswap and buy them directly over there, right? But this approach is similar to what's, I don't know if you know already, like WBTC, right? So essentially, like, what we do is Zen comes in, we have to be compliant with those assets, then we put those assets in custody. Now, the custody provider for Zen is Copper, which is an institutional grade custody provider. Well, it's a custodian to be specific in UK, based in UK, right? That's where the assets will be sitting. That's where essentially from there we stake those assets and we earn staking rewards and so on and so forth. Now, what's happening on the other side, that's kind of layer number two, is how do we actually deal with the tokens, with the StakeZEN tokens, right? What we do is we have another custody partner called Fireblocks. Fireblocks holds about $400 billion of assets under custody, right? And they're already integrated with all these different, essentially, enterprises and institutions in the space, right? Which, they already trust them and they already understand how they hold the assets. This is essentially multi-party computation security, right? So essentially, it's a system that allows us to be essentially minting and rebasing and dealing with all these different ERC20 tokens, all these different functions, instead of being like a simple multi-sig. It's a system where there's multiple servers involved, there's multiple people involved that make sure that every time that something happens, it has to be following these type of rules, right? So for example, it's looking into, okay, there's this many Zen in the system. So the minting can't be above these many Zen, because we can actually check from that system that's living in this kind of secure enclave that there's sufficient assets to be able to mint them over there, right? Like, we're essentially trying to kind of represent all the type of restrictions that you would be holding here in a way that, for example, anyone can be going into the StakeHound website and see, okay, how many Zen are in the system? Okay, these are the nodes. You can actually look at that on-chain real-time, no problem. We actually have a partnership with Horizen to essentially try to use the Horizen technology to make sure that everything is totally kind of provable. But then on top of it, I don't know.
Audit chain, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. No, very, very excited about it. No, I think it's key, right? So essentially, as we're saying, we've got like one place is where we actually hold the assets, and the other one is how do we actually deal with the issuance of the tokens and the rebasing, all these different things, which of course is key, right? Like, if you're providing liquidity and then someone could actually mint, there's a problem, right? That would be a very big problem. Both of those are insured. Then we use another system called CoinCover, where actually we've got kind of the fail-safe of the keys, right? That's actually insured as well. And then we've got a partnership with Nexus Mutual to actually have insurance that the users can get for specific for the stake tokens, right? So if you're worried about this StakeZEN going down in value for whatever risk, right, you can actually go ahead and you can kind of get that type of insurance, right? Furthermore, our smart contracts were audited by QuantStamp. The smart contract itself is essentially just an ERC20 token with a few functionalities around like the regulatory piece, right? And then what's important here is that it's a rebasing coin, right? So maybe that's something that's worth diving into. So normally on ERC20 tokens, what's happening is that you're transacting number of tokens, right? I'm sending Angie 10 tokens, right? That's essentially on the ERC20 contract. Essentially, there's a balance for Albert, there's a balance for Angie, and essentially my balance will go 10 down, for example, right? So what's happening on a rebasing coin is that actually what you're transacting is like percentages of ownership of the total supply, right? So I'm just sending you a 0.001% of the supply, and that's it, right? What this allows us to do is, with a single transaction every single day, we can essentially distribute the rewards to all the holders, right? So in the case of Zen, the rewards are not really distributed daily, right? It's like, I think it's weekly, right? But essentially what's going to happen is that once a week, when the rewards are distributed, then the system will calculate how many rewards needs to be distributed, and will do a rebase on the token. So essentially the total supply of tokens in existence will change, increased by the rewards, right? But it will be only one transaction for everybody, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think like the rebasing aspect of this is something that sometimes takes a little bit to capture. So yeah,
it's key. I'm glad you did, Albert. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to explain all of this, because it's could be common questions or things that we are on a day-to-day involved, but the community is always eager to learn more and go deeper into these topics. So, okay, I have here, there's a lot of questions coming, so I'll try to kind of like pick the best ones. Hopefully the community don't hate me for picking only just the best ones. So let's see. Okay. I have here one that says, Rob, the gas fee on Ethereum is so high. It's difficult for smaller players to participate in DeFi. When can Horizen platform support DeFi activities with lower fees?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. In fact, we're being very judicious when we, educate our community about this product. Is we want to make sure that people are very much aware and understand what gas costs are on Ethereum. Because it doesn't make sense to buy, $10 worth of stZEN and pay $25 on the gas fee, or whatever it is, right? So there's a certain amount of stZEN for which it starts making sense to get in here, and we're making sure that we at least educate people on that. Now, I do think that over time, and Albert's more of an expert on this than I am, but over time, gas fees, I think, will be coming down, would be my guess. And there are other platforms out there that I would be curious to know if StakeHound is looking to get these products on that have significantly lower transaction costs. Now, of course, there's also the stuff that we want to do in the Horizen ecosystem, and our sidechain system itself is just designed to have very low transaction costs in itself, so we can scale. So I'm looking forward to ultimately getting to that stage. We're not there yet. Right now, we're playing in the Ethereum world, and we just need to understand that reality.
For sure. Okay, so I have here one for Albert. It says, will StakeHound explore DeFi functionality or building a sidechain on the Horizen platform?
Yeah, so as I was saying before, we want to become the one-stop shop, right? And like here is going to be an umbrella where you're going to have a bridge from any layer one protocol, from any staking protocol to any DeFi protocol. Now, kind of like very much related to the previous question, right? Ethereum right now is indeed very expensive. It looks like it's going to be quite expensive for the foreseeable future, meaning at least, let's say 6 months to a year, probably, right? We will before then be already issuing stake tokens on other platforms. So you'll probably be able to be trading stZEN on another platform in the very, very short term, right? Another question here is how, like every time that you build one of these bridges, right? One of the biggest concerns is what is necessary to build a successful bridge, right? And there's multiple things, but one for sure is the liquidity, right? So for people to be able to use stZEN, right, you have to have liquidity on these automated market makers. Now, this is not easy because, well, that means that the community needs to kind of join together to provide liquidity. I'll give you an example. If you want lending to be possible against stZEN, if you want to be able to use that as collateral, right? What happens is that, well, the system, the smart contract that allows this lending needs to have a way to find a price fit, needs to know, okay, what's the price of this, right? And not only that, needs to find a way that if it had to liquidate the position, it would actually have to find somewhere where it can actually sell it, right? And, without automated market makers having good liquidity, then lending can't happen. But for example, if you look into something like Ethereum, like Rob was saying, it doesn't make sense to make a $10 transaction to buy stZEN, right? So here you've got that you already need to have, you need to be buying a bigger amount for it to make it worth your while for the transaction fees. But on top of this, if there isn't sufficient liquidity on the automated market makers, then the slippage will be too hard, right? Too big, right? So essentially, it's going to be a lot of kind of working together, deciding, okay, so Horizen community guys, what do you want to do, right? Like, would you rather be on Ethereum? Would you rather be on, say, BSC, right? Like, would you like to be on BSC? Then, okay, how are we going to be dealing for it to have sufficient liquidity so that people can be transacting? You know, like, we're going to be working together over the next few months, essentially, just to make sure that everything is in place and that we're doing this in an orderly fashion. I think for sure we will be starting with Ethereum. To be honest, like, that's where the money is right now. Like, that's where the, you know, the volume of the ecosystem right now is there. But yeah, we're absolutely already working on the integration with other layer 1 protocols, and like yeah, so it's something very, very, very important for us. Totally.
Amazing. Okay, I have here one question for Rob. It says, Rob, I'm already running SEN node. If I want to get stZEN, do I need to dismantle the node I'm currently operating and recreate the node through StakeHound?
Yeah, yes, you do. That's the mechanics of how this works is you need to send your Zen, and this is if you want to use that same Zen, then you need to actually send it into StakeHound and have stZEN minted with it. But you know, otherwise, if you wanted to use other resources, you could just go you know, to one of these liquidity pools on, you know, whether that's going to be SushiSwap, Uniswap, TBD on that, and you can buy your stZEN on the open market. So there are different ways to do it. And once you buy your stZEN on the open market, you don't need to do anything further with it to earn staking rewards. And this is the whole, really the big value prop for why working with StakeHound is they are experts at being able to do this rebaselining so that you can actually earn these rewards passively instead of setting up and operating a node yourself.
Sure. Okay. So I have here another question. It says, this one is, I mean, I'm a fan of this one. It says, Rob, I've heard Horizen could support millions of sidechain transactions in one block. Is that true?
It is true. And we actually, right now, the engineering team is formalizing a really nice performance table that shows how our sidechain system is performing, so at least like theoretical values of it once we get to mainnet. But the bottom line, the really cool stuff to talk about are the system, the V1 of the sidechain system will be able to support something, say, like on the order of magnitude of 1,000 sidechains operating in parallel simultaneously, right? Now, if you aggregate all the transactions that happen in all these sidechains, and then all the blocks that are forged, all the epics that are packaged, the certificates on the epics, all these certificates sent back to the main chain, we're looking at something on order of magnitude of like 10,000 transactions a second. So like about 1 million you know, transactions across the entire ecosystem that could happen per main chain block. So it's a really big deal. The thing to note, though, the big caveat of all this is still not a high frequency trading environment, high frequency block cycle environment. This is still, you know, snark based transactions that are being generated on the sidechains. The thing is, we can just do a lot of blockchains in parallel, you know, at the same time.
Awesome. So next question is for Albert. It says, it's kind of like a two questions in one. It says, how are node rewards distributed? And I mean, I know you already talked a little bit about that, but it says, what percentages of node rewards are distributed to stZEN holders?
Mm-hmm. So as I said before, like the distribution of the rewards essentially happens through this mechanism, the rebase, right? So what we're doing, as I said before, is just like changing the supply and increasing the supply accordingly to the rewards, right? Now the fee calculation is actually straightforward. At the same time, it's difficult to kind of like give a specific number, right? So we have to pay for staking, custody, compliance, and our own operations plus transaction fees. The way this works is our own operations keeps about 7% of the fees, right? And then there's about like 7% more or less that comes with the compliance, staking, transaction fees, and custody, right? So it really, really depends on the price of Zen, right? Because as the price of Zen goes up, the cost of staking is lower, right? So there's a bunch of things that as the reward increases versus the costs that are, you know, pretty much stable, then well, the percent that's going to be decreasing, right? So if I had to say a number, you should expect something like 15% fee on the rewards, right? Now, if you look at this as well, like what you can do there, right? Like, so imagine that you're getting, say, 85% of the normal rewards. Then with that on top of this, you have to add like all the different things that you can get, right? So for example, you provide liquidity, you'll get earnings extra reward. So our goal is not really to be competing with other staking providers. That's really not our goal. As I said before, we are here to essentially be working with, like, be an umbrella for other staking providers. We're integrated right now with 4 different staking providers to do this service, right? So it's essentially, here is a liquidity service, right? So you've got a way to actually to use these bridges, and that's the reason for this. So yeah, I'm sorry that the answer is not more clear. It's essentially, so yeah.
Yeah, Albert, let me just point out though, so you're talking a 50% haircut on node rewards, but when people set up their own servers themselves, that costs money. And when they run VPS,
you have to pay
another provider that they pay money for it as well. So you guys are just very efficient at what you do, and you get really good rates on the back end. So I mean, really, if you look at the economics, this is very much a huge value add, not really a subtraction.
Yeah, totally agree. So I have here now questions from the live audience. Thank you again for contributing with your questions, everyone. It says one very interesting question here. It says, if you went through KYC for a certain level and then STZEN appraised in value, pushing you to the next KYC level, would you be forced to redo KYC? This is for Albert.
So StakeHound is incorporated in Switzerland, which is actually very strict on the KYC and AML process, right? We don't really see the like pretty much everybody going through KYC and AML. We see pretty much everybody just going into Uniswap and just trading it there. It's just way simpler, right? For those that still want to do that, and the reason, like, why would you want to do the KYC? It's essentially because you know that for 1 ZEN, you're going to get 1 stZEN. If you do that on the market, you will probably not be getting that because, well, you know, there's a slippage. There's essentially the people that are doing the KYC and AML potentially want to profit from doing that, right? So there's multiple reasons why the price on the secondary market for stZEN will probably not be exactly 1-to-1. There's arbitrage. There's many different things that can happen, right? Now, to answer the question, well, normally the process takes, you know, a couple of days, right? The price can be the price can be fluctuating. So the reality is that if it really changed a lot and it changed the whole kind of tier, well, really what will happen is that the compliance official will be asking you, okay, can you, like, we noticed this thing, so can you give us this extra information, right? But really, like, the tiers are not that different. Like, what you have to be providing from one to the other is not like, well, let's say like below 3,000, which is between 1,000 and 3,000, it's really simple. Above 3,000, like, normally it even takes like a video call, for example, right? So it's already like the barrier is pretty high. We do this because our target is really institutions, right? So if you think about this, like, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious now that everyone can see that regulation is coming, right? There's every day more and more regulation, especially around privacy, for example, right? Like you want to know for a fact that, you know, we're not going to be delisting stZEN because, you know, we know that every single ZEN that comes into the system is absolutely compliant. This is very important for us, right? So regulation is coming, and it's good because it's the only way that then institutions can come as well, right? So we're essentially defining the system so that it can be institution ready, right? Like, we want it to be fully compliant. We want it to be fully secure so that then institutions can join and they can be bringing a lot more liquidity into the system that you know, like, as individuals can possibly do, right? Yeah, so that's it. I mean, essentially, you're like, it's normal kind of KYC and AML. As I said, a little bit more strict because of being in Switzerland. So it's like, you know, you have to explain the origin of funds and so on. But it's something that it's, I wouldn't foresee much problem there.
Definitely very important. And I would like for Rob also to comment on this kind of like the compliance part, how Horizen is also contributing to this since the beginning.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what I can say is this product, just the way that it's structured, it just makes a lot of sense to go through this KYC process. And I did it myself, and I have to say I'm not the happiest camper when it comes to doing KYC. I mean, we are a privacy-oriented project, right? So sometimes it can be viewed as anathema to our community. But for this particular product, it makes a lot of sense. And it's just one of these things where, again, optional. if you want to do it, if you want to participate through this channel, through actually, minting stZEN by depositing Zen, this is the way you have to do it, right? Now, if you want to just go through the open market and you want to take advantages of, more of the, peer-to-peer natures of DeFi, you could do that as well, right? So I think the way that I look at it is, as long as people have a choice, I'm very happy for that type of mechanism.
For sure. Now let's go a little bit about kind of like the interaction from the users with going from stZEN to Zen. One question that I see here is, for example, if the exchange is manual only, and what's the typical wait time to enter and do this change?
Yeah, so we work with different providers. Some of them are OTC dealers, for example, that have specific APIs open for them, and they're already like whitelisted. So essentially, if you go through an OTC dealer, then it's basically automatic, right? If it goes through our own onboarding, there's multiple layers, right? Because, well, as I said, like we are very, very strict on this front because we want essentially to be institutional ready. And that essentially means that you have to be doing the KYC and AML process. And as I said, there's potentially a video call that takes, a couple more days to actually arrange the video call and have it with them. After that, the moment that after kind of you're cleared KYC AML wise, then the transaction will take a maximum, basically about 4 hours. So you send in the Zen and you're going to get on your Ethereum wallet. So yeah, you will get on your Ethereum wallet in about 4 hours, the stZEN. There's kind of, we're automating this process even further. It's just like right now it's working with a series of snapshots that happen every 4 hours between one party and the other, like the compliance and us. And then like we essentially issue the stZEN at that point, right? I said like there's different places, right? So you see money comes in, goes through compliance, goes into Copper, right? Then once in Copper, our system detects that, issues the stZEN, but it does that from Fireblocks, right? That system it's quite a few steps, and like we're essentially working on automating that farther now.
Hey Albert, so what about users that want to onboard with Copper directly? Are there advantages to doing that?
You can just do that. Like then it's actually faster. You have to essentially do the KYC and ML once. Well, with us, it's essentially on a per participation basis. Like if you want to send 100 now and 100 later, you kind of have to. It's not 100% the same process. It's like 80-90% faster the second time, right? But you still have to do it, right? So you still have to wait. If you do it with Copper, well, essentially, they have their own business model, so they keep a cut on the transaction, but at the same time, you get the transaction almost immediately, right? That is actually quite useful for people that are more like interested in arbitraging, for example, right? Like the price of Zen and stZEN will be going up and down, and it will just be changing depending on many different things, right? And I think that we kind of have to be, we're working constantly on how to improve the infrastructure so that this price gets together, and essentially like people have the tools to be able to do this, right? So we, for example, as I said before, we've got this API, people like OTC dealers or arbitragers that are like incorporated, even like they can access to this to actually do things faster. So if you go the automated route, very easy. If you go the manual route, of course, it's a little bit more painful. Yeah, that's essentially it. So you can very much welcome everyone to go through Copper, and like you can just buy stZEN over there, no problem.
Awesome. Next question is for Rob. It says, how will Horizen maintain the participation in its node network if the return of investment for stZEN becomes comparable with secure or super node rewards?
Yeah, I mean, so the return that stZEN is getting, at least the node component, it is from the node network itself, right? So they're participating directly in the node network, just on the back end, right? But what Albert and StakeHound are doing is they're taking the Zen, then they're working with actually existing and very repeatable staking service providers in our network, or node service providers, and they're just setting up nodes. So it's not like that Zen's ever leaving our infrastructure. It's just kind of shifting hands in a way there. Now, of course, there will be other forms of yield that you'll be able to get with stZEN, and this is just the market dynamics. And like we're big, markets people. We want to see a lot of options out there for the community. We want people to be able to choose between products that have different advantages and disadvantages, and then the market will be able to clear what is the relative kind of demand for each of these things. I think this is just a very clear win for the entire community. Is we're just unlocking a whole bunch of value and people can choose to either stay directly in Zen, in which they control themselves and they're setting up in their wallets, they're running nodes on it, they're earning yield that way. Or if you go to this other channel and you work through stZEN, you're kind of trading off that whole like being able to do the nodes yourself and control the Zen yourself, but then you're getting stZEN, and then you're able to take stZEN and do different things with it, whether that's borrowing, whether that's participating in liquidity pools and earning additional yield. So it's just a trade-off. That's how I do it.
Awesome. Okay, I have here, between 3 or 4 very, very good questions. One of them is, does StakeHound have vacations or working hours? In other words, it might take a week to trade during Christmas.
So there's kind of many different layers to that, right? First is the good thing about Ethereum is that it never stops. So you can be trading the tokens all day long, no problem. Yes, there's nothing that's going to happen over there, right? So that's 24/7. The other thing is, how do we do the distribution of the rewards? So that is essentially automated fully right now. So already when there's a reward coming, the system already detects that there's a reward, already prepares all the transactions, and like now there's only like one last piece, which is like we just have to say, okay, this is a fine amount of rewards for what we're expecting, but the system already like checks everything, and we're almost ready to essentially like automate that piece as well, right? Now the on and off ramp, so whoever wants to actually go through the KYC and AML, that actually works with working days, right? So we have this compliant partner called Altcoinomy, and they essentially, they have their own working hours, and they have to essentially make it make sense. So essentially on them is like working days. That means that if you take it like on a Friday, even Thursday potentially, you can have to wait for the weekend until you get the stZEN, not because of us. Like, well, you're gonna just like send, like from the moment that you're cleared, you just send the tokens into the address, right? Then it's pretty much automated. It's more like the compliance piece, right? But you can do as well what Rob said about like just go into Copper directly and just buy it there, and that is they have to do kind of manual KYC and AML as well. But then once it's automated, you can just do it like fully automated. When you're cleared, you can already do fully automated.
For sure, totally. I mean, excited, super excited. I'm kind of like in the background, like I want to also like participate. I want to be part of. Okay, so this is a question for Rob. It says here, how do you think this advancement, this facilitates, and how this would kind of like help Horizen's name to grow, like with all these interactions with all of these community members and people doing all of this interesting, how can this kind of like make Horizen's name grow?
Yeah, I mean, from a brand building exercise, this is huge, because this gets us in a Zen product into the Ethereum world. And there are many different participants that are just in that Ethereum world, and they're going to stay there. It's working really well for them, and this is just where they want to be. And now they're going to have a Zen product from there. So I think hands down, this is unambiguously a good thing in brand building and getting our name out there. Now, the other thing, again, circling back to the earlier part of the conversation, that I'm so excited about, maybe even more excited about, is that bi-directional flow of ideas and people and partnerships. As we're building these relationships, StakeHound, all these different providers, apps within the DeFi ecosystem, these are relationships that we're building with our community, and we very much expect that we're going to be, learning as we go and building products based on what we're learning. So this is something that I view as a huge step for us as an ecosystem. From the finance and unlocking value perspective, it's tangible as soon as this product goes live. And maybe Albert can talk about that as well. But then the tertiary benefits that just happen over time with the brand building, getting the name out there, getting products out there, adding liquidity to different marketplaces. And like Albert said, Uniswap is I think the second largest market in crypto right now. That's huge. That you can look at this, if nothing else, as we're getting an exchange listing on, like one of the biggest marketplaces in the world, right? So it's unambiguously a very good thing.
For sure. And now a couple of more questions. One of them is for Albert. It says, is StakeHound US friendly?
Yeah. So as you know, like US regulation doesn't kind of fit very well with many token issuance platforms, let's say like that, right? So the way that we tackle it is essentially, like I said, like compliance is number one priority for us. Well, first, number one priority is security. Second is compliance. And we've essentially taken the choice to kind of follow the same kind of rules that you would expect on an ICO, basically, right? So if you're an accredited investor and US, no problem. If you're not an accredited investor, then we can't kind of issue tokens for you, right? You can always go to the secondary market. You can go into Uniswap and trade there, but we can't do that for people that are not accredited investors, right? Yeah, so that's basically it. I think we're very friendly to US people and companies, but at the same time, it's just, yeah, there's limitations what we can do.
Sure. Okay, so part of the final question is when does StakeZEN go live? Is it ready yet? Where's it? How's the timeline? Rob, could you give us more about this?
I'm going to punt to Albert on this one, actually.
So yeah, StakeZEN is ready. Essentially, what we're doing right now is we're just inviting everyone that wants to be participating early on, right? Like I said before, like we're building the bridge, right? So now let's say that the technology of the bridge is ready, but as I said before, like one of the key pieces of the bridge is liquidity, right? It's like you don't want to be launching the token and have, $100,000 of liquidity, right? You want people to be able to be trading. It is possible that this is going to be building up slowly, but now it's the moment where anyone can join and anyone can participate early on, so that when we launch, then there's a good liquidity and people can be participating, in a way that makes sense, right? Like to me, it's super interesting how like the different models, like you have an order book exchange or an automated market maker, right? Like the benefits for the ecosystem are so different, but of course, like the implications and the requirements are completely different as well, right? So we're always trying to level all these different things. We already have some very good partnerships lined up for the StakeZEN launch. I think that's going to be very, very exciting. And now we essentially would like to invite anyone that wants to be participating early on and wants to be supporting the bridge to essentially, join and essentially wrap some StakeZEN and then help us with the liquidity on the market making exchange.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so we're almost arriving to the final part. We're about to be finished here. I would like to ask Rob one last question, and maybe Albert afterwards you can also comment on this one. How do you guys see this collaboration in the future? What do you think it's coming in the next, 3 to 5 years in the mid term for this partnership, Rob?
That's an awesome question. So first, right now, the immediate partnership for us is, we have a DeFi expert that's really holding our hands and helping us wade into that marketplace, and not just wade in, like kind of dipping our toes, but just diving in, because he's actually teaching us how to swim. So it is by far the superior model to just kind of get in there and having this relationship where we're learning everything that we can as quickly as we can about this marketplace and how to make it successful. And then, a little tidbit that maybe we didn't highlight very much is we're also going to be technology partners. So we talked briefly about audit chain. Well, audit chain is what we're doing right now with Celsius to be able to prove reserves on these decentralized networks with digital assets in a decentralized way, a privacy-preserving decentralized way. And we look forward to building out this technology with StakeHound as well to offer another assurance to their users that these funds are actually where they say they are. The reserves are actually there. There's nothing fishy going on. I think that's just like such a cool thing to do. And then going beyond that, we look forward to longer-term tech engagement with StakeHound to be able to explore privacy-preserving DeFi applications that might reside in the Horizen ecosystem.
Awesome, super exciting. All right.
To be honest, I think that's going to be like the most exciting thing, right? Like when the bridge is already live, and when we understand like all the things that actually DeFi really wants, and that you can like optimize them for the specific use cases that Horizen can do, building the bridge on the other way. So essentially you can get other tokens. You're going to have StakeZEN on Horizen, StakeETH on Horizen. You're going to have whatever in Horizen. All these different things will just kind of be. I think it's to me it always has been fascinating, the tribalism in crypto, right? Like because of this isolation of these islands, right? Like everyone is completely separate. But what this will allow is people on the DB community to jump into Horizen and use STDB to do that specific feature that they want to do. right? Now we're going to be having there's going to be a lot of work in how do we make this bridge so that there's little hurdles in terms of compliance and so on. But there's I'm really looking forward to see all the different possibilities that this will unravel for sure. It's going to be very, very cool.
I mean, like I said, since the beginning and in the background, I'm excited. I'm kind of also raising my hand here. Hopefully I can do that as part of the Horizen team. So super excited and happy. I mean, I think these types of collaborations, they really open up a lot of possibilities, interactions, and really kind of widening up everything that we're doing here, both from the ones that are already inside the ecosystem and the ones that also want to be part of it. And there's always new people, new community members wanted to join. So I guess this is it. This is it. This is a wrap up. We had an amazing set of questions. Thank you everyone for contributing with them. Please remember to visit both websites, stakehound.com and horizen.io. Check out the partnership, the announcements, and I mean, also thank you guys. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Rob, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, for being such a great host here, and for the community for all the good questions.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you very, very soon, and stay tuned for more exciting news.